with a client of mine that's been a client for the last 3 years. He has the world's quickest and fastest street legal pro modified drag car. This car is completely legal to drive on the street, and also it runs a quarter mile in 6.5 seconds at 226 miles per hour.
Our thing is lowering this record to a point where it's almost unattainable. It's a development thing. You know, people own cars for a long time and develop them over a long time. This is too new yet. Once we've developed this properly, it'll be a car that nobody else will be able to compete with anywhere.
There's a unique situation in Europe running, or at least in the UK running Pro Mod. And the unique situation is that the track is a great equalizer. The track isn't stellar. And those guys are used to running on a stellar track, like in Tierp and some of these other venues that they run at in FIA. So they're struggling, just like everybody's struggling, to get a hold of this racetrack, and that's in our favor. So power to weight wise, we're at a disadvantage. I mean, this thing weighs 350 pounds more than the cars that are running against it. Even if we get a hold of the racetrack and run great, it's not going to be anywhere near what they can run if they get a hold of the racetrack and run great. So they certainly have us outgunned, but we can sort of at least make it interesting by running something competitive enough that they don't have the opportunity to make a mistake and recover from it. We're going to kind of be that car where you better go down the racetrack, because if you spin the tires and we run what we're supposed to run, you're not going to beat us. We won't be able to come back around us.
The team is about having a good time. It's deadly serious when we're racing, deadly serious when we're on the car, but outside of that, we have fun. Tony's been with me with Red Victor 1, Red Victor 2, and now Red Victor 3, and he's the crew chief, and he's my eyes and ears outside the car, so I trust him completely, and he's a good guy. And Art, he's a good guy. He eats everything and eats for all of us, and he's a man mountain, but he's a real clever guy and good to have around as well, because Will's the PR man, and he does some filming as well, and Deb's been part of the team for 30 years because she's married to me. Gary's been part of the team since he was born, because obviously he was born into it. Tony's son is also graduated into our team. He's 17 years old, and he's another apprentice. Like him and Gary are the apprentices, but they're good apprentices. And Shane T, he's American, but he's got the banter that we've got, and we just have a great time.
In a drag race car, maybe more so than any other car, you're very, very limited to the amount of power you can put through the tire, and this the only thing you're doing is trying to accelerate in a straight line, so it seems like it ought to be easy. But in fairness, there's a whole lot of things that influence how much power you can put to the racetrack, even on the same day. Just a variation in track surface, the temperature of the track. And so my job is to not only calibrate the electronics to match what the car is. In other words, we've got a 540-inch engine, it uses methanol, it's twin turbos. So I have to program the controller so that it puts the proper amount of fuel and ignition advance in for any given amount of boost. I also have to program it to put the right amount of boost in based on the power that the track will accept through the tire. I left on the 14th. I got here on the 15th. You know, I'm weary-eyed. I get here late at night up to this part of England. The next morning it's up early, go to John Webster's, you know, find out what's been changed on the car, do the things that I need to do to make them work correctly. Yeah, Thursday morning when we got to John's, you know, we had some things that we needed to do to get the car, just get the car ready, because it hasn't run since September. It's now got a new engine block, new camshaft, it's got new wiring parts, it's got a lot of configuration, small configuration changes. But we needed to verify that those changes were done correctly, test them, so that we knew when we got to the racetrack we're here to run, not here to figure out problems. All right, so then do you want to test the injector outputs and make sure they go to the right cylinders?
Yeah. So you start from one.
obviously probably might have to unplug them to be able to tell. We thought we'd run through and check the injectors and make sure they go to the right cylinders, but they don't seem to be going to the right cylinders. So I'm just trying to work out where the problem there. It could be at the firewall end. I mean, the only part that's in the car stayed the same. So the part that's the problem is the part that's out here on the motor. But the problem is we don't know how it's wrong. I mean, it'd be easy to move them, get every pin off by one or something like that, and get it where it's, it's firing the wrong cylinders. So far, the number 1's right, but number 8's firing when number 7's supposed to fire, and so we don't have any of our auxiliaries working like they're supposed to. So I'm just trying to work out what, maybe where the problem is, so I can decide how to fix it wrong. And of course, it's on a part of the car that you can't easily take off. So if you take it off and put it on the bench, you could just go put it on the bench and work it out. But I'm gonna have to probably try and figure out how I'm gonna fix it while it's on the car, because otherwise it's gotta come apart enough to get that harness out. Whether I fix it or the guy that did it fixes it, it doesn't really matter. The point's moot. You gotta do the same amount of work either way, so. If I can work out what's wrong, then maybe I can just go, oh, here's what's wrong, and switch it at the connector. And but he got a hold of the guy that built the loom, and the guy's like, look, just I'll come tomorrow and sort it out. So he's gonna come first thing in the morning and fix it. Or at least in theory, he's gonna fix it. So with the pinhole that we had in the splice, that allowed 2 injectors to be controlled at the same time when they shouldn't be. They should be controlled independently. And so that was obviously going to be a problem, and we were able to sort that out before we came to the racetrack. So we arrived at the racetrack Friday night, sort of dabbled around a little bit with the engine. We weren't quite ready to start it. Saturday, the guys got up early and sort of got a preparations going to be able to start the engine. I went through all the electronics, did all the checks I needed to do. Okay, fine, good. We're finally ready to start the engine. We go to start it, and it won't. Now, there's been some changes. Again, it's a new engine block. It's got a brand new camshaft. It's got a new camshaft position sensor that's in a different location than it used to be. So all these things we need to verify before we try to make sure that it's really going to run. So we run through our checks, yeah, we think we've got it, we try to start it, and it's sort of popping out the exhaust, and that's typical when the ignition advance is wrong or the timing is wrong for the engine. And what I mean by that is, the cylinders have to fire in a particular order. So in the case of a standard Chevrolet, there's 8 cylinders, and it fires 1, then 8, then 4, then 3, then 6, 5, number 7, and number 2 finally, before it starts back over at number 1. So the ignition spark has to fire at the correct top dead center for each of those cylinders, otherwise that cylinder doesn't run. If it's firing out the exhaust, it's firing at the wrong time. And it's not just a matter of, oh, it should be 15 degrees instead of 20. It's way wrong. It's an order of magnitude wrong. So I know we have a new cam position sensor. I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong on how I measured it earlier. Let me just move it. I can move it to the other half of the cycle. The engine's going to start right up. But when I moved it, it's the equivalent of taking the distributor out, having it 180 degrees wrong, and turning it 180 and dropping it back in. Only I'm doing it electronically with a keyboard. So I did that, and it was no better. In fact, it was just equally as bad, which it should not have been. You got 2 choices when you do that. You put the distributor in 180 out, it does not try and start. It just pops and bangs and never runs, ever. You put it in the right way, it fires right up and runs. So electronically, it works the same way. If I have the trigger in the right spot and I've told the ECU the correct parameter, it's either going to start and run or it's going to pop out the exhaust like when you have the distributor 180 out. It's the point I'm trying to make is it's trying to run when it's got the distributor 180 out. And it's trying to run when the distributor's right. So it's like, it shouldn't be trying to run at all when it's wrong. It should just be popping out the exhaust and not trying to start at all. Okay, well, when I had it one way, it was popping and trying to start. When I had it the other way, it was popping and trying to start, it can't be. So just based on logic, I had a gut feeling. I was telling Will in the trailer when we first started, this thing's out of time somehow. Did the wiring get changed? I made Will come out and check, because really the only thing that'll do that is the ignition part of it. So nothing was changed in the wiring loom. We did get a new wiring loom on the injectors, but the injectors won't cause that problem. Only the ignition can cause that problem, and that was not changed. So after a little bit of you know, sort of back and forth with the guys, and we did some other tests. Eventually, I decided it must be the engine. But that's a really hard sell because it's almost never the engine. I mean, it's almost never something mechanical that's wrong. It's almost always something electronic. And so you kind of got to be, you know, a little bit thick-skinned and got to be a little bit stubborn when you've got 7 guys that are telling you no way it's the engine, it's something that's in the electronics. However, the electronics don't change themselves. They don't wear out. They never decide because they're bored or they're angry that they're going to do something different than what they're programmed to do. So unless someone's physically moved something somewhere, the electronics is going to do the same thing it's done forever. And I eventually convinced them that it was worth the time, me being wrong, to check the engine. So we took the rocker covers off and just ran the engine slowly, starting at number 1, and watched the intake valves open. And it became obvious on the third one because what we should have seen is number 1, and then number 8, and then number 4. But instead we saw number 7.
Right.
So 6, 5, 5. And then normally when it 7 should be next, but it's going to be 4 instead.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's no question about it.
Look, not only that, we know how it sounds, right? If you didn't know anything, you knew the fucker was out of time, and you were right, it's out of time.
Yeah.
I knew it was out of time.
But it's trying to figure out what's out of time.
And the fact that it ran both ways was like, so what's going on is when it's wrong, it runs on those 2 only.
Yeah.
So it goes, and when it's right, it runs on all other 6 and not those 2 and pops out
And
the
that's
top.
why it's popping and it almost started. And if it hadn't started, it would have been on 6. And then it
would have been on 6. Exactly right, for sure. So we all agree?
Yeah.
Good. Well done, man. I spot 7 4. Just logically, though, it's not the same exact camshaft. It was purchased to be exactly the same, but it's not the physical same one. So turns out we take the rockers off. Sure enough, it's got a 7/4 swap. The engine's what's wrong. We got the cam from whoever. We don't know where the problem existed in the cam, you know, where the communication got lost or broken down, but we know at the end of the day, we have a firing order that's different than what it's supposed to be. So then I had to move the electronics, make them match what the engine is now, the configuration it is now, and then as soon as I did that, bang, it fired right up and ran.
Pressure 166. How much was it? 160 per inside. Yeah, it's got too much.
Now we got the engine running. Fine, we figure we must be past that hurdle. Then the next problem is it actually has too much oil pressure, which seems like shouldn't be a problem. But we had normal oil pressure might be like 80 to 100 psi. On one of these cars, but we had like 160 psi, and the problem with that is that it tends to want to explode the oil filter. The seals aren't really ready for that kind of pressure. It also puts extra stress on the oil pump drive itself. So we wanted to get the oil pressure down what it was supposed to be. Well, of course, the oil pump got changed. The spring that's in it isn't the right one, and we didn't have the right spring here. The right spring's back in Wolverhampton. So that it just when you just keep look, you're not going to get the guy to overreact by poking him one time in the stomach. But when you poke him once, and then you poke him once, and then you jab him, and you poke him, and eventually he's like, had enough. Like, I'm done. Stop. I don't want this anymore. So that was kind of what happened when it was kind of like the last straw. Like, I've had it. But anyway, that was resolvable pretty easily. We were able to just cut the spring down and release the tension on the valve. It's just a regulator valve with a spring behind it, and it has too much spring force, so it makes too much pressure. we take the spring force away here, it opens easier and the pressure drops. So that's all we did. We were able to cut the spring we had and make it functional at least enough to check the rest of the systems in the car to verify that they were working correctly. Yeah, I mean, basically once that was resolved, the car ran. We were able to test a few things. The engine was it's brand new. Mark Lamoud just put the engine together like 3 weeks ago. He finally finished, and the engine went in the car, and so that was its first time starting ever. And since it's brand new, instead of taking it straight to the racetrack, which you would typically do with a drag race only car, but this is a street car, remember? So with this kind of an engine, you sort of want to give it a chance to, it's almost like stretching out before you work out. Basically, there's components inside the engine have all been machined. They're all very sharp and very square. And it just needs to run a little bit and let those pieces sort of mate with each other. It doesn't wear things, but it's just sort of almost a handshake between all the parts, so they get introduced to each other.
torque converter part in the gearbox that delivers drive from the engine to the leg cable. So at the moment it looks like there's a problem in the Bruno, perhaps a problem with a band which is designed to hold the drum in the Bruno still for the trans brake. So we're stripping it down now to see if we can have a look at it. There's a chance that Andy's probably going to have to drive back to Wolverhampton to go for the parts.
The nitrogen pressure actuates, pushes on that unit there. It's hooked there, and as you can see, as it pushes together, it pulls the whole thing onto that barrel, onto that drum, and grips it. And if there's not enough force there, it's not gripping it tight enough, so the drum just slips, takes off all the friction surface, and in this case, it's completely gone. The metal's picked up, wrecked the drum, and so it's all scrap. Obviously, you pay a lot of money for a test day, you pay your money, and we didn't even get one money, and that's what's bugging the bankroller at the moment.
Yeah,
it's a lot of shekel, but it's always the same in this game. Hey, there's an old adage that says, how do you make a million quid at drag racing? And the answers start with 2.
So Andy's got everything invested in this time. You know, this is a 30-year project for him, because realistically this started with Red Victor 1. The original Red Victor that he bought as a VX490 way back whenever. So this is an evolution of that sort of, let's say, dream. And so he's got every single thing in his life for 30 years invested in what's sitting right behind me. And so for him, when things, because he's the everything guy, he's the owner, he's the driver, you know, when it's not at the racetrack, he's the guy that's doing all the maintenance on the car, and obviously he's the guy that's buying all the parts. And so he's wearing many hats, and that makes the stress level way, way higher than it would be for just somebody that owned a team, say, or somebody that drove for a team. that's the ultimate goal, is to make it go down the track. So, you know, the tune-up's right, and if we know it goes good to the 330, then we'll run it further. But there's no sense putting wear and tear on everything if it's not right, until you know it's right. And the quick part of the track is the early part, so that's the part we have to work on anyway. Of course, as soon as we make any kind of run, bring it back here, pull the data out of the ECU, you know, look and see what everything on the car is doing functionally, is it working like it's supposed to, and then decide what change to make based on, you know, what we did on the track and what the data tells us. If everything goes right on the early runs, then obviously we just keep going further and further down the track. Once we're happy, probably with the 8th mile number, we might make a full run just to see, because we want to know what this converter is going to do. I mean, we've got so much new stuff. It would be nice to have some concept of what to expect tomorrow in qualifying, instead of going up there cold turkey and just taking a guess at it like we had to do in the past. Being our best 60-foot ever, so I mean that's good, and that just means there's more potential left in the car, because we made a lot of other wholesale changes to the car. I mean, not the least of which is that the block that's in it's 100 pounds lighter. That changes not only how much mass you have to accelerate, but it also changes the distribution of mass, because we took heavy weight out of the front. So essentially it's the same as putting more on the rear. We haven't added more to the rear, but what we've done is taken some off the front, so it's easier for the car to dynamically transfer load to the rear. I'm not going to touch it. It's too good. It's too.
Well, it's
not worth touching yet.
Nah, we need a pass.
All I'm going to do is
the data from a full pass.
All I'm going to do is
get it up on the jacks, do the lash, do all that kind of stuff. If we can get a full pass in today, that's fucking as good as we can do. We can then let's have a look at it all properly.
Yeah. Only go all the way down and try and shift it on the shift light. Send it.
You know when you're at the end, it's like a gantry. Shall we?
Bye back.
Bye back.
No time things to it.
Rain.
Today's update is more of the same. But in the meantime, during the warm-up, Andy kind of said, well, you know, it seemed to me like I don't really remember the gearbox making a positive gear change when I shift the second gear. So after we fixed this, we started it again just to check, and sure enough, we've not got second gear. So we've got first gear and third gear, but no second. So now the gearbox has to come out. And of course, you know, I mean, we're supposed to be going to the starting line to run the car, so it's just It's just another one of the things in the long list of things that have tried to derail us from being able to run this car down the racetrack. So we could get lucky if we find that no one's gone to the starting line yet because they're backed up. So we could get lucky, find the problem, solve it, put it back together, and still actually make this session. But that would be, fingers crossed, best case scenario. This is qualifying session 1. There's another one this afternoon, then 2 more tomorrow. But, it's so difficult to get runs here. You really can't afford to give any up, particularly for something stupid. So we're trying our best to try and make this run.
Putting some record runs, but he's very, very consistent. And if he can run what's the time?
What did I tell you, Matt? No one can do it.
We thought we had no second gear, but really what we had was no low gear. We were always in second, but when we would move the shift lever, nothing would happen. So it seemed like, well, nothing's happening when we go into second gear. So, obviously looking back on it now, having the benefit of hindsight, knowing that we wouldn't have heard anything if we went and ran it, it would have been smarter to go run the car because we'd have got some data, but you can't take that risk. And it's easy to know now it was the wrong decision, but it wasn't an easy decision to make then, let me tell you. All this stuff's new, and we still haven't had any data on what it's going to do at the other end of the track. So, and that's true even at this point, but we have had that sort of 330 run we had the other day to give us some data, and the indication would be from the data we have that it looks like it's probably going to be fine. So obviously we're going all the way down this time again, but we're going to use a conservative tune-up because we've yet to go down the track again.
Yeah, that was all right. I mean, it didn't have a gear change, or at least it didn't have an audible gear change. You couldn't hear the gear change happen, so it's going through the converter, and we need to work out why that is. And he thought, obviously in the car he heard that it hadn't made a gear change, so he backed off the throttle when he got halfway down, and he never went back after the throttle after that. So it ran 500s better than it ran on the 659 to the 8th, and then he closed the throttle down and kept the boost at like 20 pounds from there to the finish line, and so it obviously didn't run very hard in the back half. But we really need to work out what's going on with the converter, because that's the key. And this converter should be tighter than it is, and it seems like it's not, so we need to figure out why that is.
we got a full run, but they're just blowing through the converter or doing something, because it's not anywhere near the potential of the car, but it's a good first effort. Good for all of us because we got a full pass on it. That was just so important today.
There's some weirdness going on here too with the wastegate. Like, it's almost like, and obviously you close the throttle down, so that dropped the boost all the way out of it, but it's also got the boost peaking here at about 41 pounds, and it's sort of slowly dropping back. And the duty cycle on the wastegate valve is ramped up to 60%, and it's still not doing anything boost-wise, so I don't really know exactly what's going on there yet. Let's see if I can work it out. Yeah, because I'm sure the shift light, what I mean in low gear is shifted on the shift light in low gear, but I'll bet you it's not going to drop enough to turn the light back off. The light's just you're going to shift it and the light's going to stay on. So then don't just immediately pull it in third. Just at least give it like a 1-2, which will be, you probably need to give it a 1-2-3-4 because you'll be going 1-2-3-4. You know, I mean, it'll be super quick. Just give it a second to eat, second, and then pull it in high. So that's shit. Better speed, 226. That's best speed by 6.66 miles an hour, but the speed doesn't really matter to drag race. It's ET, and we gotta fix that thing where it double clutches itself on the starting line, and we're never going anywhere. I think I see him pop out the front. You can see in the slow-mo that the wheel stops, and the car just, and then it takes off again. I don't know what the hell that is about. Qualifying round 3 today, which was our first run today, we're going to leave the starting line in low gear and really sort of stretch its legs and see what it has. And we were able to run a 664 at 226.66 miles per hour, which is 6.6 miles an hour faster than we'd ever gone before. But it's also 100th slower than we went leaving in second gear, so we knew there was a problem. We could tell right away when the car left the starting line that something was wrong because it launched and then essentially stopped and launched again after it left the starting line, which clearly, as the seconds tick away, that slows your ET down. But we were still able to take some data from the other end of the racetrack, and we knew we were making power if we're running 6 miles an hour faster than we've ever gone. So we sort of upped our own personal best speed to 226, but we didn't get the ET that matched it. So for the last session today, we knew we had to step up our game a bit, and we made some adjustments to the tune-up as well as solving the problem that occurred in the third qualifying session. Something stellar. I'm sure you'll see the best run it's ever made. I imagine it'll run 646 or 7 at close to 230.
do you think, Shane?
It's how easy it is to put your fingernail in it. Can you even get your fingerprint? The rubber's just a little too gooey. You know, it's like now it's actually slicker than it was when it was a little bit colder. And it's, I'm sure, because this track's not used to having this kind of heat on it. It's usually overcast and rainy and cold, and so this rubber's not ready for this. That's a pretty good accomplishment. It's 650, although we're kind of hoping for something better. In fairness, it's 900s quicker than this car's ever gone. It lowers the street legal pro modified record down to 650. We reset the speed record at 226.91. So in fairness, we've done every single thing that we set out to do with my trip coming here, which was to reset the record in ETN speed for a street legal car, qualify for this event, and now we just have to finish up with the last piece of that, which is to now win the race. Yeah, I don't know.
650, 226.
That's personal best.
But it really, no, it's been perfect. But that run, it just seemed to be horrible. So there you go. Simon, I said it ran crap, and we've run the best we've ever run.
So for the last session today, we knew we had to step up our game a bit, and we made some adjustments to the tune-up as well as solving the problem that occurred in the third qualifying session. And that let us run a 650 with a 9 at 226. So we've run about the same speed, but we've now got an ET that's much closer to matching our potential based on the speed. So, you know, there's probably still some left in the car. I mean, I don't want to say probably. There's most definitely some left in the car. We haven't hit the potential yet of what this car is capable of doing, and that's what we look to do going forward into eliminations tomorrow. Having said all of that, we're still 650 with a street legal pro modified car, puts us 7th in the pro modified class in the FIA main event. So that's no slouch. The race tomorrow, the strategy will be, you know, we actually have the upper hand because we're qualified better than whoever our opponent may be. And we don't know who our opponent's going to be exactly because we're number 7. We're supposed to race the number 10 car. The number 10 car is broken. which means we're going to get an alternate. Most likely we're going to get an alternate, we think, that has the potential to severely outrun us. So we're going to go to the starting line knowing that he has the opportunity to outperform us. That's almost notwithstanding the fact that we know we've run 650. We know he can run way better than 650. Having said that, he's not gone down the racetrack. As a matter of fact, we think that the guy we're going to race may be the guy that crashed earlier today trying to go down the racetrack. So we're at an advantage psychologically because we've been down the racetrack. Even though we don't have the performance potential that he has, we've got a better track record this weekend of going down the racetrack. So we use that strategy going into round one to make decisions about what we're going to do with the tune-up. And what we're basically going to do is tickle what we've got now, try and run a little bit better than we've run, try and run in the 40s, and let the cards fall where they may. If he comes out and runs 625 and beats us, more power to him. I mean, he ought to. He's got a 5-second car. We've got a 630 car. Run because one of the other cars broke. Actually, 3 of the other cars broke. So the guys that were going to be taking the place of the guy that qualified 10th, they also couldn't make the call. So we had a buy run, which that sort of changed our plan a little bit, and we went for it, and it didn't work. And so that's how it usually goes when you try to do something you've never done before. So what we're going to do going forward, I think for them it's going to be way more beneficial to have a tune-up that kind of they can rely on than go run some hero number. So now the goal is, we put the tune from yesterday in that went 650. We're going to just see if it'll go 650 again, and that way we can tell that, if it goes 650 or 51 or 49 or whatever it goes, we know that we've got a tune-up that we can rely on. It'll do the same thing more than once. And that's more important for the rest of the year than trying to rip off a hot number, which, it would be a guess, and it's just too easy to guess wrong, as obviously evidenced by our first round sort of performance. So we'll go up there. We got to race the quickest guy in this part of the world, and he just ran 6 flat. We're not going to run 6 flat, we know that. But if we can run 650 and he makes a mistake, we'll take it. even if we ran to what we think the car's potential is, we still weren't going to beat him. So there was no sense in really even trying for that. In fact, they've got a race in a couple of weeks, and then another one a couple of weeks after that, and then they don't have anything going on until the Euro Finals. So, you know, in reality, it makes more sense to give them something that they can race with than it does to try to be a hero right now, take a chance at running a great number, not run it, even if you do run it, and break it, they're screwed for the rest of the year because they can't fix it in time. So, yeah, I mean, you asked me if I'm happy with how things turned out. No, I'm not. I mean, ultimately, there's some left on the table, but hey, that's how it goes. You can't, you know, it's just like, it was really a victory in and of itself to do what we've done. We had a lot of shit go wrong. I mean, we should be pretty happy that we even got a chance to even run the car at all. I mean, look, just like now this happens, you know. So I mean, it's just a constant game of trying to figure out how it's broken itself this time. And luckily, you know, we were able to run, you know, a few runs, and we didn't get all the opportunities we were supposed to get, but hey, at the end of the day, we just reset the record by 1/10 and 6 miles an hour. I mean, that's no slouch.